online, you see we have about a dozen, 15 people here in the room, and then about 10 people here online. So thank you all for being here. And I do want to introduce also, I have Mohammed Omar here on the line, and he's with First Light, and he's going to kind of be our virtual host. So he can focus on the people who are attending virtually, and Jeremy and I can focus on the folks who are here. So, but at any time, if you all want to, jump in with a question, feel free to do it over audio. They're going to be shown up on this speaker here, and or put something in the chat, and someone will interrupt, and we'll get started. So let me share my screen. I almost forgot. Yeah. Aha, welcome. So just well, we talked about all these people, but I mentioned Jeremy and I's companies down here because they kind of give us our time to come and do this. Just to review our purpose, we exist to help everybody in the group learn, for sure, because there is a lot to learn about Power BI. But also to build relationships, something we enjoy, especially after the last couple of years. You value even more those relationships you get to have with folks when you get to see each other in person. It means more when you're visiting online or over the phone, and building those personal relationships. We have some fun too. Just deepen our understanding of our community, of each other, and then to help solve specific problems. So actually, much of the afternoon is going to be focused on that point. In front of you, you'll have a sheet, and Mohammed, if you wouldn't mind, you could post this in the chat, that questionnaire, I guess. I was going to call it like a hot seat questionnaire or something like that, but while we go through today's content, you might have some things occur to you that are either hopefully big ideas that you can apply in your work, or big challenges that you might have been facing. It's totally okay if it's a personal challenge. But it might be a challenge your whole organization's facing. And so if you wouldn't mind writing that down in the afternoon, I think we're going to have some time to work together as a group to try to solve those challenges, because a lot of times people have seen the challenge that you're facing, at least in some form. And we want to be helpful to each other that way. So this is a good time, if you're online too, to think about, and the question number one, if you don't have the handout yet, is simply, what is your biggest Power BI challenge? So under the heading of solving problems. Oh, next up, let's look at our agenda for the day. We're in the middle of the kickoff. Don't worry, we're already halfway done. I'm going to recap. I am going to recap some Power BI news for us, though. And then Thomas Bruton, one of our senior analytics consultants, will be sharing about a new feature in Power BI called field parameters. He demonstrated this internally to the team on Monday, and we were all like, you got to show this to the user group. This looks extremely helpful. And then we'll also have Evan Friel from Power On. He'll be joining us virtually. So I'll have to make sure the audio works well for that, but we'll figure that out. And he'll be telling us about a product called Power On that can even enable write back and is very good for financial planning with Power BI. So Evan will be he'll be joining us about 11:30. And then after 11:30, we'll break for lunch. Here's our kind of overview of that. And then have some time in the afternoon to work together as a group and solve problems after lunch. One thing I'm going to insert in there is I kind of have a short presentation on like the top 3 things that I really think you ought to be aware of going on in Power BI right now. Thanks for posting that, Mohammed. All right. Great. Okay, so we're going to recap. It's been 6 months since we met. In the future, I'd like to meet quarterly, but we missed a quarter, and so got several new things to kind of update on. But I would say you can tell Power BI is starting to reach the maturity phase that while there are some big features, it's not like every month there's like earth-shaking things happening. They are fine-tuning a few things you can start to tell, like, hey, we fixed how the table visual navigates. Now you can use keys, and now it sorts these. You can use the page up and page down buttons. So when they get to that kind of level of thing, okay, yeah, we're fine-tuning a little bit here now. But the new format pane did go live. There is canvas zoom in Power BI. Hopefully, if you're on a later version, you've noticed down in the lower right corner, you can zoom in on the canvas, which is so nice. And but they basically added that to Power BI and Teams as well. So, okay, that's nice. Again, fine tuning a little bit here. But over in July, there was this update that I do think is pretty significant, and I have more detail on this later. This thing called data marts. So a data mart, is anyone using data marts yet or starting to? Okay. Just in preview, right? Yeah, and I think it is only in preview, public preview right now. But it is like a way that users or any Power BI user can provision a SQL database out in the cloud, an Azure SQL database. So depends on what you want your users doing, but you can have them start to provision Azure SQL databases out in the Power BI service where they can load their data, and kind of it really takes citizen ETL to another level when they can kind of provision and control their own databases to land data into and then query data out of. So we'll talk about that a little more, yeah, because it is sort of it could be a game changer, I guess, or it could be a nightmare, or it could be a nightmare on the way to something really great. I'm not really sure yet. I saw a presentation in Chicago in September, and I was like, I'm not convinced yet. I think I see where they're going, and I think it could be really good, but I wouldn't want to just be like, hey, users, make all the databases you want. We need more copies of our data all through the environment. Go make some. That's not exactly. yeah, it sounded like anti-gov, which is kind of what all these features are about in some ways. It's like, we're going to make this harder to govern, IT. Let's see. So yeah, conditional formatting for data labels. That's nice. They said there were some DAX editor improvements. I went to look this one up specifically because I was like, oh, good. I have trouble with the DAX editor all the time. And then they were just like very vague about it. They were like, yeah, we made some improvements. We think it's better. I was like, okay, we'll see about that. One that I did want to highlight from September, this is again a preview feature, but they're apparently turning on an option where you can share data outside of your organization if you turn on those settings in the admin portal and you want to. That is something that is coming and something to maybe be aware of. One other feature that I kind of skipped over here was about, and because it happened in the spring, but I think it GA'd in the summer, is you can also publish apps to different audiences or different reports inside of apps to different audiences. And we have a little bit of a demo about that in the afternoon as well. Let's see, October. So updates to metrics. And I really highlighted the metrics because is anybody using either the feature that was called goals or is now called metrics? Okay, nobody is. Yeah, nobody in the room is. Anybody online? I didn't see anybody on the chat. Okay. So it is a way you can like take your KPIs and put them at the Power BI service level. So rather than having it just live inside of a report, I've got this report that calculates my KPI. Yeah, I can say, hey, you know what? For the whole organization, we want to hit this sales number. Classic for an organization, and have that be a metric. Yeah, you still will tell it like what data set that goal comes out of and what the goals are and things like that. But kind of a way of trying to build a scorecard, the old business scorecard we would create, but at the Power BI service level, and you can get alerts on those and things like that. So it's an interesting idea. I haven't heard a lot of uptake yet. I was curious to kind of we actually have a team member at the Past Summit event out in Seattle this week, and I'm kind of asking them like, find out what people are using. Are they really using metrics or what's going on? But there are some people, I think they're mostly just playing with it. It's interesting, but not necessarily making like business critical scorecards in it yet. And then let's see, modeling updates, November. Yeah, more submetrics and things like that. I would say one other thing that's not on here, they haven't posted it online, but at the conference in September, they showed a little preview, very, very preview code. I hope it wasn't NDA because they showed it at a conference, but they were really showing like they might be taking the whole Power BI desktop experience about connecting to data and modeling data and seeing the data set view and trying to get all of that up in the browser, basically. To where it would be kind of like you do, I don't know if you've ever done Power Automate, but in that tool, it's kind of like browser first, but you can do it with a desktop tool. I think that's where they might be headed with Power BI as well, where they really want you to be able to do everything, including modeling, and they've got a Power Query editor in the browser already for data flows. So it's just a matter of getting those relationship views up there, and I guess they have to make space where you can load all your data, which they already do. So it's on the way. There's going to be a change in the experience, but they did say that that's still like a couple of years out. So they were like, this is very preview. So what's the timeline on it? No, we don't have a timeline. So if they don't have a timeline, it's got to be at least a year away. Anyway, so that's a real flying overview of 6 months worth of of updates. I think if we had tried that 2 years ago, there's no way we could have covered 6 months. It'd have been like, yeah, we have to slow it down and break it apart. There's always a lot of announcements every month, and they do a good job. Just so you know, there's a blog post. You can follow that blog. They always do like a 30-minute video to review that if you prefer to consume it in a video format. And that's kind of how we compile these slides, just reviewing all their blog posts and making sure we're hitting all the good stuff. Oh, I guess on the animations, that one got last. The field parameters feature. So Thomas, I think we'll turn it over to you shortly if you're almost ready. I know I'm actually a little bit ahead of schedule, perhaps. Yeah. But yeah, while you kind of get on the meeting and before we turn things over to Thomas, any like other features that have been big for you all this this last 6 months, or things you want to know more information about in that list? Anybody online, feel free to type in the chat. All right, cool. All right. Welcome to the folks who came in just now. Thanks for coming today. We didn't get to say hi. Thanks for coming. Well, Thomas, with that, I'll go ahead and start. I'll start your long introduction. Okay. Yeah. Well, it probably would be better for the folks online if you can be up here. There is a power outlet if you need it. Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm going to introduce. This is Thomas Bruton. Thomas and I have known each other now about 4 years, and we started working together this year, so that was exciting for me. He is a senior analytics consultant with First Light. Prior to that, he was an independent Power BI consultant and also had a company of his own. So he's been doing this quite a while, and he has been pioneering and experimenting with this new feature called field parameters. So we're going to see what that is all about. Move this out of the way for you. And they should be right there, though. So it should be okay. I'll leave this connected to the display. So if you join the Teams meeting and share.
Absolutely.
Oh. And there's a picture of Thomas. So you can know it's him.
I was connected to the meeting, and now it appears I am not.
Well, it'll give you a chance to fill out think about your challenges and new features.
Wow, there's a picture of me and everything, so you can validate that. Yep, that is me. So I have a confession to make, first of all, and I've said this out loud to my employer, but I don't get very excited about this technology generally anymore. I've been working with Power BI since it was in preview back. I was thinking about this earlier this week. I think that went back to maybe 2013 when it was just, part of what they were calling kind of like the Power View experience in Excel. But it's a great set of tools, and was initially going to present on calendar tables, which doesn't sound very exciting, and it's kind of a wonky thing. There's some, in my view, some interesting things that you could do there, but this past couple of weeks was working on some stuff for clients, and this particular report has just been a pain in my butt for a long time. What they were asking for was pretty reasonable in that they wanted to be able to see the same type of metrics, but choose what axes they displayed them over. Seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do. And there are many ways that we could accomplish that within these tools. You could do things like, if we want to keep that all in the model, we could create, super dimensions that are, smashing data together, and then we could select, but that could get a little messy from the data side because it's like kind of synthetic stuff that really doesn't exist. If we're talking about smashing together customers and suppliers and item categories all into one thing. Those things aren't inherently alike. So, we're creating stuff just to drive the user experience. We can also do bookmarks. Bookmarks are incredibly useful, but they're difficult to maintain. I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna go ahead and start to share here. Bookmarks are really powerful in that we could time the buttons and create all kinds of interesting interactions in our reports. But for me, when I'm developing, it's often that I'm going in and duplicating pages, because I'd like to put all my stuff in shapes and use colors, and that way I kind of have a unified look and feel to all my reports. And it goes without saying that every time I would use marks, I would break them, right? Because I'm copying and pasting and I forget what controls what, and it's just like, oh, wow, this is close, but not quite the experience that I want as a developer. And it also can get confusing for users. Like, okay, I push this button, but it takes me somewhere I don't even expect, and it's not necessarily apparent, how those interactions work from a user's perspective. So, kind of back to what the customer was asking for, which is we want to see really the same metrics, but we want to control what axes or what attributes we are evaluating those metrics over. And so, like I mentioned before, we could do some synthetic data things in the model. We could use bookmarks, but generally, kind of the way I settled to deal with this is I'm just going to give you, 3 or 4 report pages. They're really going to be the same report page, but I'm just giving you a different filter set, on this page, and it's going to be in our demo here. We've got some Formula One data. I'm a fan. It's kind of esoteric. I understand, but so we have one page here where we're going to show, this is by the nationality of the driver. And then I have another page. It's really the same page, but it's just by the constructor, right? Same metrics, right? But once again, thinking back to the developer experience, when I want to change this, I got to make changes in multiple places. And for me, the longer I've been doing this work, it's like I just want to make it as simple as possible, not just for my well-being, but it's also going to make me more productive for the customer. I'm going to make fewer mistakes. I'm going to deliver quality products and not spend all my time spinning my wheels getting the thing to work, in that particular way every time. So when I first saw the announcement about these field parameters, like, you know what? That's actually something that solves my problem. A lot of the enhancements I think are great and interesting, but from a Power BI developer standpoint, don't always hit the mark in the same way, right? But once again, yeah, it's all about me. So this fixed my problem. So, and yeah, please, if at any point I say anything that doesn't make any sense, or you want to dive deeper into anything, just raise your hand and let me know. So we have our 2 report pages here that are essentially the same. And, I've got a slicer here, and, ideally, I could, come in and maybe select, multiples, and that's kind of a pretty basic user experience. Same thing here, right? Like I said, these are the same report page. So just pull the room. Have we created stuff that looks like this before? Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that you have had when we do, you know, this type of development where we're creating essentially the same things, but just tweaking it slightly? Anything?
Just a human error of forgetting something on maybe one of the tabs. But now they're not all free. Same. It's just easy to get something out of sync.
Yeah. Right. So from even from a data standpoint or just a design standpoint?
Visually,
Yeah. Right. It's a great way to get egg on your face as developers. Like, okay, I'm going to give you this thing, you know, we're going to tweak it a little bit, and all of a sudden the numbers just don't make any sense. Like, yeah.
Power BI, like the Microsoft developers for Power BI really kind of enabled this approach with you being able to sync slicers between pages. So that's one of the things that I will have to do if I'm in this situation. Use bookmarks like you suggested, you know, so having bookmarks when I push a button on the page, hide or reveal a visual. Another tip to do.
Right. That's a great thing that works until it doesn't, right? Because, you know, if we have to have 3 or 4 visuals and maybe it's a matrix or a table that's quite wide and it's filled with all these different measures. Like, oh, why is this slow? Well, because I'm loading it 4 times. So let's just demo a little bit what a different type of experience could be. Then we'll get in how it works. So once again, this is all kind of contrived, but this particular page should be able to give us the same type of experience as we had on the other 2 pages, but I am using a slicer to control my axis down here below. Okay, so we're taking something that what we were fixing through design elements, and then we are moving it back into the model. But we're not having to do anything complicated from, you know, Power Query standpoint or some sort of ETL process to create these weird synthetic, you know, super dimensions.
What you've done there is essentially create, you know, you had 2 pages before, now you have the equivalent of 4.
Right. Yep.
This is field parameters.
Yes. Field parameters are pretty easy to create. Come here to the modeling view and go to new parameter, and you select fields. You get this design experience. And we could put whatever attribute we choose in our list. I'm going to put constructor. Well, I'm going to name this first of all specifically. So constructor. I'm going to put driver surname. I'm going to put driver nationality. And to be intentionally confusing, I'm going to put constructor nationality. And we could have it go ahead and create a slicer and put it on our page.
You could like say constructor nationality or.
So let's duplicate our page here. Okay, so this is what we created. We come over here into our field list. Here is the object that was just created in the model. Yeah, my new parameter list. And, I have all the options. I could rename this, right? But what I found myself doing is coming over here and just working here. So let's call this driver nationality. Structure nationality. We could even change which order they appear. So it's 0 indexed here. So if we, wanted to change the way those are ordered, we have control there.
One thing I noticed is that syntax is a quick way to make a table in DAX, so it's
Yep.
curly braces.
Yep, it's creating a calculated table in DAX. If we look here, right, we have essentially this is the one column of our calculated table. And here, let's get rid of this slicer here. And let's change this slicer, instead of calling it axis, let's call it, let's bring it in there. Okay. Now we could use that in place of an axis in a chart or in a table. And our visual will respond based upon those values.
In your visuals.
Mhm.
And you can.
Right. And we will get, based upon our selection, a list of values from our model for those columns. So anything that you could have done with a slicer here before, you could do with a slicer here, even though it's a fill parameter. So we could edit the interactions, make it filter some things on the page and not others, if that's behavior that you wanted. So, if it's something that you want to filter the entire page, something like a slicer element on your page, it would be recommended. If you want it to interact with, just say, yeah, we just want it to be specific to, this visual. Well, I might take my slicer and just, throw it into that shape there. Let's see. Right. That way it's more specific to call it out to users. Hey, this just controls this. It's not going to affect anything else on the page. Yeah.
With different attributes, like if we had the same visual and we wanted different measures.
Yep. We'll get there in just a moment. Yep. So, playing with this, I just wanted to, point out, some things in behavior that you wouldn't necessarily expect until you're doing it. So I'm just going to pull up a table, or actually a matrix, and I'm going to also make a slicer. And I'm going to put my new parameter list in my slicer and in my table. So I dropped that into my table. Why did I get 4 columns? Yeah, you would, when we put it in a slicer, we get 4 values, but really we've created a table with 4 columns and all the values from those columns. So when,
Cross up of all the combinations of those 4 columns.
right, but when we select the value from the slicer, we get what we asked for. But you see, we control click and we're getting all of our columns. So that's a behavior that we couldn't produce before. Now, I say couldn't. I can't think of a way to have produced that behavior before. Yeah. So that will be even more apparent when we come here, create a matrix. We start expanding these things. Yeah, because the first time I did this, I'm like, what just happened?
You couldn't do that before.
Right. I don't know what I just created. So yeah, be aware of that, because particularly using a matrix, it's going to look like a hierarchy when that may not be the intent that you have. So building on your question, let's create a new parameter. Yeah. Sure. Sure. The question was that I was going to address was, we did this with attributes. Can we do it with metrics or measures? And the answer is yes. So sorry, did I not address what you were asking? Okay. Okay. My apologies. So we're going to call this my new selection. And I'm going to just drop a bunch of measures into our field parameter. Okay, and it gave us the slicer here. And I'm going to drag this into our, let's go and make this a table. Okay. So now we have a list of measures that we can change in our visual via a slicer. And just like we could with our list of attributes, we can control select. So if I wanted to just see first, third, or first, second, and third place finishes. But now I'm showing it by constructor. What about driver nationality? Constructor nationality. So once again, we're talking about flexibility and ease of maintenance. Right? We have these two objects that allow us to create something that's much more flexible. But from a developer standpoint, you're not going to break it as easily. I'm sure we will find fantastic new ways of breaking this functionality, but we won't break them the same way that we broke the other things. Right. Exactly. So, you know, the ability to select your measures. Yeah, like I said before, I don't know a way that we could have recreated this type of experience where you're multi-selecting. So if I was going to do this and just be able to switch between one measure, we could do that in DAX fairly easily. We could do that. So I'm going to go into the query editor. And I'm just going to create like a disconnected table. Right, and it's going to give it some arbitrary values. So this is actually, let's tie it to something that makes sense so we don't forget what we're creating here. I don't know about you, but me typing while other people are watching, it feels like a high wire act. Okay, so I created a table with one column, has three values, first, second, and third. Okay. Let's create a new page and we can play with that here. All right. So there are the elements we just created. So, like I said, if we wanted to do this in DAX, we could. Yeah, there we go. Without IntelliSense, I would be doing something different for a living. How many, just by show of hands, are familiar with the switch functionality? So switch function it's an if statement. Kind of strange. If we say switch, then pass the first parameter as true, then we could give it a list of conditionals and it will evaluate based on the truthiness of our selection. So say selected value. Let's go by. Table, column 1. Another thing you will know if you work with me for any period of time, the links I will go to not type something are pretty astounding. Like, I bought a keyboard that's programmable just so I could select all, control, and paste all one button clicks. Ooh, didn't like that, did it? Tell me, Brent, where's my DAX
Sure, yeah.
going
So
wrong?
where is the DAX thing? Well, this selected value needs to be closed. Those
Oh.
functions are closed.
Thank you.
And are you wanting first to be the default value if it doesn't have a selected value?
I was going to say blank else. Yeah, that should work for what we're trying to do.
And it might not like your syntax, but okay, it did. Okay, good.
Oh. Yep, actually, we didn't tell it what to do, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so here's what we're saying. If we select first, we want it to do something, right? And we want that to be first place. Okay, now my DAX actually makes sense. So what we did, we just created this measure that says, if I select from my created table 1ST, it's going to give us the measure first. Okay. So if we come back over here, let's add a table. Oh, not what I intended. Of course.
So what it is that it's the syntax. I think you're looking for like if the selected value equals 1, equals first, right? And I think what we wrote was with a comma in between.
Yep.
Yeah. So selected value is a really helpful function. And you may have used it already, but it will, if there's a single value selected in the column, it will give you that value. If you have more than one value selected in the column, it will actually return a default. The default is blank, like it will return blank if there's many selected. But you can override that with a second parameter. So that's kind of what it was. That's why the syntax was happy because it was like, oh, okay, we'll just override blank with the print. Yeah. It's always about just getting the equal signs and parentheses and spaces. Yeah, anyone sign up to be a programmer? Did you mean to be a programmer? Okay, yeah. When you started your job. We're all turning into one, aren't we? Yeah. We just have There's an extra close paren after the word third. Popping up on us. Yeah. Screen's a lot bigger for me because I'm looking up there.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be okay. It hasn't looked happy yet, but that should be right.
Okay, there we go. Whew.
The field parameters were easier. I think we all, yeah.
Yeah, right, but now we can switch between our measures, but we still have this issue where, it doesn't know, my visual doesn't know which measure I'm selecting, so it's not going to change the title. We get into weird things, field formatting as well. So my purpose here with the demonstration is we could do something kind of like this, but it's a lot more challenging.
Yeah, why go through all of that now that we've got the parameters right?
Absolutely. In terms of what this looks like, how it's implemented in the back end, it's pretty opaque. If we were to look at this model in tabular editor, for instance, so we see, our calculated table. We see how it's defined right here, but there's not a whole lot interesting in terms of the metadata in the background, right? So there's some things going on here that are opaque to us as developers at this point. And once again, this is still in preview, so it's all subject to change. So this is all great. So I've built all this. I've created my parameters, and I published my report to the service. Yep. What happens if I connect a new report to that published data set? So I still have my field parameters, but they look a little bit different. So here, I still have this slice by. But when I'm looking over here at the model, it doesn't show it, doesn't have the little function symbol over it when we were looking at it in the PBIX that we built it in. So just be aware. So if you do publish a data set that has field parameters in it, that will be available to you if you connect live to that data set out of the service. But it will look a little bit different, even though it will function the same. Okay. So you see here, make that as our slicer. You see, then we could take and still functioning just like it did in the other report. So what questions do we have? I find this, like I said, incredibly useful because it solved my problem.
Could you show how you did the measures again? And I might have been back there closing the door. I don't remember. But like, I saw the way you picked the columns with the name of thing. But how did you set up your field parameters for measures?
Sure.
Was it a similar kind of like name of, and you told it what measure you wanted it to show? And I guess, could you show us how you put that in the visual where the measures were switching around? I must have missed a lot. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So you will notice here that since we are live connected to that data set, I cannot create a field parameter on top of this data. Okay. One more time here, running through. You're welcome.
I missed a lot. Yeah.
So-
By that door for a while.
Right.
It was fast.
Then we're just going to go through and we could select one or all.
You have a measures table, which makes that very easy since
Right.
they're all there together. That's handy. Yeah.
What's in the drop down that says, what will your variable adjust?
Numeric ranges or fields. I don't know what is going to happen if I select numeric ranges.
That sounds like the what if parameter that's existed for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? So we've always been able to say, not always, but for a long time, we've had change this number from this to this. So they're using the same functionality. Now we can just use
Fields.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome.
I think it's a rebrand of what if. That's a good catch, Jeremy. I didn't, yeah. And I don't really see the word what if up there anymore in the ribbon now that you mention it.
Right. So now we have my measures again.
And can you drag your fields and your measures in one chart? Be like, show me these measures by these fields.
Absolutely. We could create a monstrosity.
I feel like it's gonna solve at least half of the requests that I get from users, because it's always, I love this view. I just want to see it by this attribute,
By
or
everything.
I want to change this measure. So this is huge. I mean, this is very exciting.
So yeah, let's make our. So just to be pedantic and clear here, if you want that experience, you need to select your field parameter and put it on the design palette. Then we could take my measures again, and it's going to, yeah, create this type of really Cartesian product. For those of you who are into set theory. Right, and then we can have the ultimate dynamic visual. So any other thoughts, any other questions? like I said, many times, I was excited about this because it solved my problem. Now, it may not be as exciting to other users, but I think the focus here should be on this is, well, first of all, it's in preview. So when it breaks, that's why. And second of all, I'm all about maximizing for me because it's all about me. So I want to make sure that anything that I build, I can maintain easily. Right? Bookmarks, they're really flexible. You can do all kinds of interesting things with buttons. I always break them, and I don't know why. And it takes me longer to understand why it's broken. Or if I open up someone else's report that they've created and they've got all these things, crazy things with bookmarks. Wow, that's really cool. Now I have to work on it, right? And I don't understand how it works. You could do interesting things in your model, but once again, it's like we don't always have control over the ETL. We don't, but if you're really good in SQL and have the infrastructure behind it, yeah, you can create all sorts of interesting things to expose to your model to make it more flexible. We don't always have that. We can do interesting things with DAX. We could still do that, but it's not flexible in the same way. Some questions, I am still interested in. How is this going to perform when we're kind of at the limit of performance in Power BI? Right? Things that were already kind of slow. It's going to be interesting to see how this performs. And I haven't taken the time yet to kind of dig into what the query plan in the background looks like. But that will be something that is going to be interesting to me the first time I run into performance issues here to see how it actually evaluates. And I would also say it's these kind of things that also help me rethink how I write my DAX and how I create my models.
Thomas, I'm sorry, go. For like putting different attributes into a field parameter. I mean, there obviously would have to be a relationship, like if I've got attributes in different queries, right? In the model, there has to be a relationship there.
Right. So, right. It's an important point. So if we look at our diagram view, yeah, anything that we used as an attribute, yeah, had a proper relationship to, that's not necessarily useful, but just to show that there are a bunch of relationships in this model. And any of the attributes were tied to the tables that we use to create the measures, right? So it's not going to filter unless it has some filter context. But that's true. If we're throwing just random stuff in slicers, it's it's not going to do anything before, but
An inactive relationship between the fact tables.
it's a great question.
I'm getting ready to do that. I'm gonna build a switch table, but.
Yeah, right. So let's imagine that typically for me, I use inactive relationships if I have like more than one date. How else are we using? How are you using your inactive relationships? What's the scenario? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, great. So I got one metric from one fact table. And I need to create a percentage of a whole from another fact table, which I'm thinking, okay, I need to create a relationship, but I know it's not going to because of the ambiguity. So that's why I was thinking, okay, well, I can have an inactive relationship to see if I can get that divisor, numerator, denominator
Mhm.
to calculate correctly.
I mean, my best advice is, yeah, try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to see how it plays out if you are throwing, attributes into your field parameter that have inactive relationships. But like I said, I don't, the only place I use that in my models typically is for dates. Like if I have like, an invoice table that, it's got like shipment date and invoice date, and, I might have one that is the active date tied to my date dimension, and the other one is inactive, because I might want to total it in some instances by this, in some instances by that. And you control,
can use the relationship.
right, you control it with DAX. So now, if your measures understand that, then it should work. If your measures don't, I would expect it not to.
Notice it keeps your format strings of your measures, which is an advantage over your DAX solution before, where you had to you could have it display a different numeric result, but you couldn't have a conditional format string for the result that came out of it, in case one was a count and another was a percentage, like these different measures are.
Right.
Those will actually, it looks like they will respect your format strings you have applied.
Right. And it gives you the column name.
That is cool. Yeah, it just pops in.
One more chance. Anybody online have any questions?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you to our host. Never been in this facility. Really impressed. Great room, and thank you all. Here's the. I love PowerPoint. Yeah, those are the slides. So, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you want to get in touch with us, yeah, firstlightanalytics.com.
Great job. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Makes me want to say, see, I told you guys it was a big deal. But you believe me, you already believe me. So what I'd like to do now, we have at 11:30, we'll have Evan Friel join us. He's going to join us remotely from Power On, and do some presentation about that. That's definitely a tool worth knowing about. Before he starts, we'll take about a 15-minute break here. In just about 5 minutes, we'll take a 15-minute break. So I thought, but leading into that, I'd like to share one of those features with you that we alluded to earlier. Actually, share an announcement that just came out of Past Summit with you. So this is kind of the big reveal of the user group, and the timing was it was coincidental, but it turned out to be ideal. If you haven't seen this announcement yet, for a while, Power BI and Microsoft has been making available paginated reporting. Anyone use paginated reporting? Familiar with what it is? Okay. Has anyone ever used SSRS before? Anybody know what that is? Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Some people, yeah. That's been around much longer. And so there's a history, there's a world out there of SSRS reports. And what they are, they've kind of rebranded them as paginated reports, but I also like to think of them as like pixel perfect reports. So you could use SSRS to very effectively produce a statement, or this is actually an example of an invoice. And it would be, you would say, I want this thing to be 8.5 by 11 with 3/4 inch margins on all sides, and it would print exactly so, right? Whereas with, also what it would do is if it had data overflow, so if there were so many line items on this invoice that it needed to go to page 2, it would print page 2 and say page 2 of 2 at the bottom. Power BI, if you ever tried to do that, is obviously a big disappointment. If you're ever like, oh, I know, I'll just send you a PDF of this and it shows you a table with a scroll bar that's like, you can't scroll. It's like, okay, so it's just, that's not what Power BI was made to do. That is totally what paginated reports were made to do. And so they've known that for a while. SSRS was kind of this, it was a legacy technology, and they've been trying to figure out, what do we do with it? It seems like it would go in the Power BI world, but but anyway, they have been making that available for a couple of years, but only for premium customers. So I know some of you in here already do use Power BI Premium and have those capacity licenses. But some don't, and they're pro users. Smaller organizations need that $10 per user per month level. And now they can use paginated reports too. So I had certain customers who were like, they went to premium pretty much just for the paginated. So I guess that's good news for them. Maybe they can back down if that is what they were going for. So that's it's a really cool thing, because then you can have your Power BI data sets, have all your measures, the relationships, the logic, the format strings that we saw, the predefined fields. And then you can connect these paginated reports to them and kind of get the best of both worlds, hopefully. The slice and dice interactive visual dashboard, and then these pixel perfect reports that, I was kind of laughed about. We would build these cool dashboards for the executives back in the day, but that they weren't used to it, and they were used to the report. They're like, listen, just print me out my 400-page report every day. I'll get it on my desk. I'll turn to page 225, look halfway down the page, and that's the number I want, right? But if I want all the other detail, it's there in my binder of daily report, right? I've definitely had those before too. Those were SSRS reports and paginated reports. But anyway, that's kind of a big announcement. There's a link there for more information. Some of you online may be interested in that for the pro level reports. But with that, we've been going since about 10. So let's take a break until Evan begins at 11:30. In the meantime, I'm going to do some sound setup for a remote presentation and make sure that you'll be able to hear okay. So thanks. Enjoy some coffee and bagels and stuff. All right. People online, you don't get to have bagels unless you brought your own. This is the problem with online. Even when you kind of are funny, you can't tell. Oh, yeah.
He said that around 2 hours, my bacteria is growing. So we
We'll be right on the cusp, I think. Yeah.
So I was like, I was like 9:30-ish, 30-ish, and he said they say 2-ish.
Okay.
So.
2-ish. Okay. Thank you for the tip. I was surprised they brought it. I thought it was going to come like now.
Right? Yeah. And for certain days.
Yeah. For certain things, I caught that. Yeah, I got
You're filtering, but you're not changing the way the chart or whatever is set up.
Right.
So did they start using CPS stuff? We could like sector.
So I need to ask you about it as soon as we finish. It's like.
It's just that's a little different because he's actually changing. Yes, I know it. And that's it's just like if you have a different page, like a different page, you want to see it like this, here's a different page. And yeah, you're involved.
Yeah.
Especially for like this.
What I've looked at so far, at the looking at the right. Yeah, it's missing the flexibility of color schemes.
Just that one to that one, which is pretty,
Um,
pretty cool.
Yeah, comparison. Yeah, and so management is like, what's the deal? You know, like, and I'm like, well, it's a,
This is the for extra sales.
yeah.
Second month in years.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't know if you were ready for that. Yeah, it's 11.
They're so separate. You're right. I mean, like, that's what a PhD report looks like. It looks nothing like a Power BI report.
Right.
You're right.
Right. And since some of the management that I produced reports, you know, because I've got my standard template, look at the color scheme and all that. And they're like, well, what is it this report? I'm like, well, yeah,
But it would take like a lot of.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I just haven't had a whole lot of experience in what, I guess it's for building. Yeah, building.
That's where. Control. Like,
Does it?
Like that object, you'll get a big property information. It's like.
Okay.
I mean.
I think I'm going to be, taking over part of the, well.
It looks you'll be like.
Contractors.
That's what.
Yeah, I think you can.
Going through them and they're like, you go into any cleanup work on the visual part, but at least yeah.
It's kind of curated. I mean,
Right, that's what it looks like to me when I open it.
It's something that does, because it is like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. What will look weird is like, I'll show you the design. So
Yeah.
it's like, you see this red square,
Yeah.
white square, and you probably see the logo, and then you see like what they call a tablet there in the middle, which is a matrix table combination. They call it a tablet.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah, what is the tablet?
I've never heard that word used.
Never.
Or six. But it's basically like, make a matrix, make it a table, it'll later.
Yeah.
So, okay, I can.
Okay.
But, and then, so you just have to know, like, your designer, like, that's
Yeah.
where I click. You can't always like, look at.
Not really, I mean, just, I have.
Every once in a while, line of that, click it and say, I want it to be this color. You have to like, you have to go find that tab and say, I want every row to be this color and every alternating row to be that color.
They're
gone, yeah, they're ready.
I see.
Because I.
Once you do it, and there's a ton of good research.
He stood me up already, so.
So you search on mine
today, but he's like, he's using core, and he's like, let's just meet. And, I just want to go over the place. He stood me up, so he kind of. So I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna set up this meeting. You can wait.
Yeah, advanced analytics with, regression analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind so much because this week, they're only gonna be able to work on content data anyway, so they're not gonna be able to really, they can only say here, I should say. So you can go out and copy stuff.
I'm here and I'm getting ready to be forced to learn.
So-
But we
Yeah.
do it a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being their chest.
I'd like to hear what challenges we give you. That sounds interesting. Yeah.
I will.
Like it's a.
That's a good idea.
You know.
I'm gonna do a little. Instead of the ground staff. Instead of the number of like.
Yeah, he kind of wanted to cross train the stuff you mentioned really briefly.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Like, it's really.
I mean, how much?
Yeah.
And. It was just.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. A long time ago.
And,
I think I had it. So you're using Power BI and I,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, where are you?
Well, I'm working remotely from my home, but for a company out of Tennessee, totally out of oil and gas.
Oh, really?
In the corrections industry. Yeah, this company owns and operates 100 prisons around the country.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but I've been working with Power BI for like 7 years now. And yeah, I really like it.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I was primarily Spotfire.
Yeah.
From the Newfield days.
Yeah, yeah, Spotfire.
I still do some in that, but. Yeah, the last couple of years.
Where are you at? What?
Actually,
Oh, consulting, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's been fun and it's been fun to watch this. How
Okay, doing just a quick sound check on my end, just making sure everything can be heard clearly. 1, 2, 3, testing. Just making a quick sound check on my end. Again, just making sure everything is being heard clearly. 1, 2, 3. Okay, mic check 2. Again, sound test. 1, 2, 3. Just making sure. Brand, you're able to hear me on your end. Again, sound check. 1, 2, 3. Just making sure sound is going through okay. Another sound check, just testing the microphone and speaker system on the other side. Again, mic check, 1, 2, please, 1, 2, 3. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. One more mic check again. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. This is just a sound test. Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
I hear you, Mom.
One last mic check, just one more, just checking speaker system on the other end. One last mic check. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Just a sound test on my end.
Okay, hello, everybody. You're gonna hear me twice for 1 second. I want to introduce Evan Friel from Power On. He is gonna tell us about supercharging Power BI with right back and planning. Go ahead, Evan. And feel free to share if you can.
Absolutely, will do. So thank you everybody for taking the time. My name is Evan Friel. I'm a sales director here at Power On. So a big portion of my responsibility is a lot of calls just like this one, just getting the word out there, making sure people know that we exist within the Microsoft ecosystem, and running through demos, discoveries, and proof of concepts. So I like to think of myself as a functional expert with regards to Power On. I am not a Power BI guru. And that first session kind of convinced me I might have the lowest IQ in the room. But nonetheless, hopefully I can introduce the functionality that we're able to bring to Power BI today and answer any questions that you guys have from a functionality perspective. So on the screen here, I've shared what we typically go through as far as an agenda. I'll spend just a couple minutes properly introducing the company, explaining what we offer, how we exist within the Microsoft ecosystem, and we'll spend the majority of the time within the demo environment walking through different use cases. We have plenty around different types of planning, custom applications, and we recently introduced a new set of visuals called Power Excel that our customers are pretty fired up about. So after each bullet point there, I'll be taking pauses. I know getting your questions answered might be a little bit weird with half of us in person, half of us online, but I will be taking pauses. And if you are online, feel free to throw your questions in the chat bar, raise your hand, whatever you might want to do from that perspective. All right, so as far as a company, Power On, like any other business, we exist to solve problems for other businesses. And the main ones that we hear are around Power BI customers that are becoming more mature in that practice. You know, they've come a long way in a digital transformation journey, building out a more modern data architecture, visualizing that effectively with Power BI. But that being said, not all the data that a business needs to use to really optimize their processes, their profitability, so on and so forth, comes directly from your systems, right? So whenever our reports rely on end user input, whether that's budgets, forecasts, commentary, explaining variances, that has to take place outside of Power BI because it is natively read-only. It's typically being done the same way we've been collecting data for decades. No matter how modern our reporting and business intelligence is, we're still collecting data from end users in Excel spreadsheets, SharePoint lists, .NET applications, whatever that may be. So our product is going to add a data entry layer to Power BI and really bring to any data collection process the full process around it, from slow, reactive, manual, error prone, clunky, not user friendly, to the opposite. So we want to enable end users and really data analytics teams to expand the scope of self-service analytics, allow end users to not only have their data visualized, but also take action on it in the same place. Again, whether that's making budget, forecast updates, performing what if scenarios, or simply adding commentary and making basic updates. So the way we make that possible is with our Power BI add-on. So that's called Visual Planner, and it is a suite of custom visuals along with a back-end write back engine that's actually going to perform the updates made in our custom visuals to the data source of your choosing. And again, this can support any type of data collection process. We see planning and forecasting quite a bit because the product is made to really cater to the needs of different types of planning and forecasting. But our customers are using us all over the place for commentary, exception reporting, status updates, what if scenarios, driver-based modeling, et cetera. So we'll be walking through a couple examples throughout the demo today. One thing I do want to note that is very proprietary about what we do is we are the only option for write back within Power BI that is compatible with tabular models. So you'll see within the demo, we're actually going to be able to write back on measures, have aggregate level breakbacks for the sake of planning. We're going to be able to see those updates in real time without being subject to the daily refresh limitations of Power BI, because our product is not only going to update the underlying data base of your choosing, it can also reprocess only the affected tables in your tabular model. So if you're using Power BI Premium Dataset, that would apply. So then again, we don't have to wait for the Power BI refresh. We'll be able to see that as soon as the end user makes the update. And this is a tool that's really used in every department, every industry under the sun. Really, the biggest prerequisite for an organization that's going to find benefit in our tool at some point or another is that they're using Power BI today and becoming more mature in that practice. So you see throughout the demonstration today, use cases in finance, FP&A, but really just as much throughout sales and operations. And that's one thing I really like about representing this company. I've worked at big name software vendors, has all the resources in the world. We can check off every box on an RFP, but still the implementations, the support that we provided, getting training, those things seemed a little bit more complicated than they had to be, especially the implementation point. And if an implementation takes 6-12 months and end users don't like it, it can be really a massive waste of time, unfortunately. So this product, what I really like about it is it's broadly applicable. It's going to leverage your existing skill sets when it comes to Power BI, as well as your existing architecture, but it's going to allow you to cater to many different additional use cases within that familiar platform. So with that said, we will jump out of PowerPoint and into the fun stuff today. Again, I'm going to focus on planning, then we'll hit on some custom applications and wrap up with Power Excel. And I will be taking a breather after each section to get any of your questions answered. So first and foremost, you can see we're going to be working directly within Power BI today. So this is a true integration. It is not an embedded application or anything like that. And really, how you can use our product is whenever you have a report where you'd like to be able to collect data as well as have it visualized, you can use a Power On visual instead of a standard Power BI visual. And like I said, there's not a huge learning curve. If you have a report with a standard Power BI matrix already set up, you install Power On, you can then swap that out for the Power On data entry matrix here, drag and drop from your data fields in the same way. So from the front end development perspective, very similar to what anybody that's familiar with Power BI is going to experience. And then here you can see we do have a data entry field. So this gives you a glimpse into what's going to take place under the hood. We do have a proprietary write-back engine, which is a web service that's installed in the user's environment. So as a vendor, we're not taking or storing anybody's data. We just allow people to create a two-way connection between their data sources and Power BI, where only a one-way connection exists today. So this link here is really what's going to be doing the bulk of the work on the back end. And for the end users, they're going to be able to come into these reports, and given they have the proper permissions based on role level security, Active Directory groupings, whatever that may be, they are now going to be able to edit this report. And one quick disclaimer before I jump into that, a lot of times we're initially met with people's hearts stopping because they think we're going in writing over actuals. Obviously, that is not something that we're going to encourage in any way, especially for the sake of planning. What we're going to recommend is a versioning modeling technique. So if you have a table you want to write back to, you can add a version ID column and a version dimension to that. We're going to keep the actuals separate. We're not going to touch those, but then we'll be able to create and manage different versions like a budget, a forecast, a what if, whatever that may be. And you can see here I'm selected on the budget version, not our actuals. So I can go in and start making changes. And I can do so at any level of granularity that we have visualized here. So if I want to update our lowest level, which in this case is an individual product SKUs projected sales volume for a given month, I can change that from,
Sorry to interrupt. I think I've got a solution that might help us get better audio. I also need to fix the video on this thing. It kind of got bad on us. So we had a little Bluetooth display thing. So just 1 second, if you don't mind, and I'm going to make a switch and let you know when it's safe to resume.
Alrighty, no worries.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, sorry, guys. Okay. What did I do? That's better, right? Okay, good. Yeah. So how do I sound over there? Not loud enough?
Sounds good on my end.
Okay, yeah, Evan, can I ask for a sound check from you real quick?
Absolutely. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Not as loud. Oh, 1 second. I'm gonna go back to the other device. My MacBook is doing better.
Is that Bluetooth speaker connected to your phone?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you turn up your volume on your phone? Can you see if well, you did that.
Not loud enough for us. It's free internet. It's also 10 gas. Free Wi-Fi.
You have more flexibility with the settings connecting to the desktop. Rather than the live.
I don't know. Okay, let's try it one more time, Evan.
Sound test. 1, 2, 3.
That's as good as it's gonna get.
Is it too quiet or too loud? I can try to pipe up my voice a little bit.
Well, it's too quiet, so feel free to be loud.
Okay. Will do. So we could proceed then?
Sorry, Evan, Jeremy had a question for you. The chat group.
Yeah, let me take a look here. That's correct. So from a versioning perspective, you can do that on the front end pretty simplistically. So right here, for example, if I want to create a new version, and there's much more sophisticated ways to do this, which I'll show you, but at its most basic level, what we're doing here is taking a copy of any existing report, and we want to create a new scenario. So I'll take our actuals, and we'll make an Evan V1. So now this is going to be pre-populated. The Evan V1 version is going to be pre-populated with the data from our actuals. But once I select Evan V1, and that has created a new version ID within the table that we're writing back to, it is only going to make updates to that version of the data. So that's how we separate our actuals. That's how we separate our, last best estimate for January versus February, so on and so forth. All right, so back over here, you can see again, we're selected on the budget here. We can make updates at any level of granularity that's visualized. So for example, if I want to update my Q1 total right now, it's sitting at 11 million. And this is of course combined, or 3 months of data going into Q1, 2 products rolling up into Apple brand. So this is an aggregate level update. I'll change this from 11 to 15 million. Hit save changes. Out of the box, this is going to allocate proportionally back across our months, our products, any other dimensions that are involved within that model. And then we also have smart formulas. If you want to increase or decrease anything by quantity or by percentage, you can use the first 3 letters of that word. So here I'll say INC 10%. Hit enter, it'll simply do the math for me. Again, because I did that at total, it'll increase each of our product projections for April by 10%. Another popular one is the ability to do even spreading. So I can do a capital E and then put in 1.5 million to get a more even spread across those months. I was missing a 0, so we got 50K, but you get the gist. So we have the proportionate breakbacks, we have the smart formulas, and then out of the box, you can also do more selective allocations using the goal seek functionality here. So let's say for July, we have the goal of increasing this number by 2 million. And looking down over some of these products, we don't expect all of them to perform so well. So instead of updating the entire product set for July, I can go through, I can pick and choose by control clicking 3 of our best-selling products. hit set goal seek, and they'll become highlighted, letting us and the tool know these are the only values that are going to be impacted by my next update. Then I go in and put in that goal of increasing by 2 million. Hit save changes, and if you keep an eye on those 3 values, they'll increase to get us that new goal. Everything else will remain untouched. And then you probably notice the bright red triangles populating some of these cells. So using our product, you're also able to leave commentary at the tuple level. So the row and column intersection, that's a big one, even for groups that don't want to do planning or update any of their data. Just having end users with the ability to explain why a variance occurred or their thought process or assumptions if they are making changes. So anywhere you want to leave a comment within the matrix, you can select that cell, come up to the top bar here, and explain, because of XYZ or whatever that might be. Hit save comment, and then anybody else viewing this report is now going to see your name in the comment that you left there. Now, those are some of the basic functionalities, out-of-the-box functionalities of the data entry matrix. I have been making updates to our full data set right here. In the case of actual planning scenarios, typically there's going to be many different, or sometimes a few, sometimes many different contributors that are going to be entering data for that report. So let's say we have 5 different divisions of a company that are going to contribute to this sales volume forecasting example. In the past, a lot of times each of them has their own Excel spreadsheet. They pass that to somebody that manually consolidates it. There's back and forth about what's approved, questions, have there been mistakes? Eventually that gets into reporting, so then you can analyze that data. Right, so with this product, using row level security, right now we can see, again, looking at org-wide data, everybody that's contributing to this. In the case that I am Chris Walker or on Chris Walker's team, I'll use that filter to show what that looked like. You can have it set up so the user only sees their relevant slice of the pie. I'm still going to be able to make updates to this version of data, but only for the data that I'm responsible for. And with that, you see we going from 8 customers just to the 3 that Chris Walker's team is focused in on. With that, we have a new set of comments here because we are at new row and column intersections. At the bottom right, we can see he's been asked by his manager to increase his total by 1 million units. If he wants to, he can continue to use the drill down capabilities of Power BI to say, all right, within our Aldi customer, I feel like we can sell 1 million more canned products there. Come down to our total for this subset, INC 1 million. And now that 1 million unit increase is going to allocate down only across the values that made it through those filters. We'll keep an eye on Chris Walker's bar chart right here. It will pop up by 1 million. And then when we remove those filters, anybody looking at this from a higher level view is going to have the latest and greatest, not only existing in the desired format on the back end within your database, but also visualized in Power BI and ready to be analyzed. So again, if that's being done manually in Excel spreadsheets, that can be a 2-week process between end user input and being able to have that visualized effectively. And this can make it, automatic as soon as somebody goes in and hits their save changes. And you can have different users entering data to the same version without stepping on each other's toes. So that is the data entry matrix. A couple other visuals that are useful throughout planning. Right here, we have a drag and drop line chart. So maybe we collect our budget, got all that done. Now we want to do some scenario planning. So we don't have to go through and make cell by cell changes here, but we might want to plan or have accounted for a couple different trends to occur. So right now, this line is looking like how we would like the stock market to be looking, where January is our lowest value and it's slowly going to increase and really peak here in December. So if we think there's going to be some upcoming changes to seasonality, whatever that may be, now with a simple click and drag, we can make those changes. This is highly configurable. This can be revenue. It can be cost of goods sold. It can be whatever driver you want it to be. In this case, it's set up so that each dot is showing us the percentage of annual sales that's taking place in each month. So when I make this change to account for 2 large upticks, I'll hit save changes. This is going to reallocate the entire plan. This is looking at the same data as the matrix to mimic that trend. So then we can see what this would look like if we had those large peaks in April. Within the matrix, you can see almost 120 million. And then in August, we have nearly 180 million. So that's also where the versioning comes into place. We don't want to go crazy with drag and drop, changes to any production level budgets or forecasts, but you can easily as I had showed, insert, take any version as a starting point for the next one, and then make changes to that. And of course, compare them within Power BI or, promote them to being a target, or just delete the version if you had to get the answer to a simple question, right? So data entry matrix and the drag and drop visual, we also have a drag and drop bar chart here. So this is similar to the line chart from a data manipulation standpoint. This tends to lend itself better to driver-based modeling. So being able to make changes to, in this case, allocation percentages. It can be really any type of driver. So also a couple examples. This is a large soda manufacturer, and they sell the same beverage in 4 different types of bottling. We got green glass, white glass, PET, and can. So up top, we have a couple different checkboxes here for what assumptions we want to show by the bottle type. We want to include the mix effects. That means this is always going to add up to 100%. And now I can go through and say, okay, what if we sell less green glass, more PET, more can? So the business users with the acumen to understand what's going on, what might occur, can really leverage all the work that the technical folks that built the data model have done. Now, these values here are going to feed calculations throughout the rest of the report. So as that save is committed, we're going to be able to see the differences in our sales, cost of goods sold. That was the main one for this. The company wanted to understand, are there some cases where we could actually sell less units, but make more money by changing up the bottling type and then targeting their marketing or distribution efforts to mirror that. So in this case, you can see I went in and made our changes, and we have this delta measure here that's going to show us our cost of goods sold went down by 43,000 based on the changes I had made there. Here's another professional services example, so much different use case, but still has an application for this visual, where this group is worried about drivers like hours, billing rate, utilization percentage. How changes to that is going to impact their profitability. So same thing goes. Their data analytics team had already built a data model in Power BI to show them, our hours and what our variance to forecast is looking like up here. Again, people with the business acumen can go through, don't have to be technical at all, make some changes here based on where they think their hours might be getting used up. Hit save changes. Hours is one of the variables, if you will, that's going to be fed into this calculation. So I make changes down here. I see the impact ultimately on the figure that I'm most interested in up here. So those are the first 3 custom visuals. Again, those are ones that are more so focused on planning because we're writing back on measures in each of them. So we'll get into some more of the transactional custom applications, but just want to showcase a couple finished examples as far as planning goes. So many of our customers have started using the Power BI bookmarks to give these reports more of an application feel and really cater to a couple different functions within the same report. So here we have a landing page. This is our overview. These are all standard Power BI visuals, snapshots, metrics that we want to be able to see. Now, in the case that we're ready to do some data input, we have a button for that. Similar to the first example, we are going to have a data entry matrix down below, a drag and drop line chart up here in the top right. So users have their choice of how they would like to manipulate data. And then also up here, you can see we have revenue, cost of goods sold, expenses. So a lot of flexibility as far as the data you can collect. Right now, I'm looking at financials. If I head over to the cost of sales, we are going to be able to update percentages. Then you can even use the Power BI bookmarks for standard Power BI use cases as well, but especially if people are going to be entering data to give them reminders on how to use the SMART formulas, things they should be looking for in their reports, goal seeking, entering comments, etc. Every change that is made using our write back engine is also going to be auditable. So this information is going to be captured on the back end, and you can use a standard Power BI table to show down to the second when a change is made, the user that made it, old value, new value, the scenario it was made to, and all the metadata lets you know where that took place. And the same thing goes if you would like to summarize all the comments that have been left within the data entry matrix as well. So for this organization, they were really able to knock out the blocking and tackling of data collection for their P&L reports. So management also wanted to be able to do some more of that forward-looking what-if analysis, which they use this tab for. From the top, you can see we have a working and a target scenario. So we can select from our options here. If I want to compare our actuals to our budget, I can select those via the drop down here. And these visuals in the middle are going to show us profitability metrics, variances amongst the two versions. And then for our working scenario, we will be able to make changes. In this case, we have it set up for revenue. So maybe I think we're going to outperform our revenue projections. I can move that up. And as that is applied, of course, we're going to see the impact on these other measures at the top. But maybe if I think we're going to beat our revenue projections, maybe our suppliers are also going to feel increased demand. So we should account for maybe an increase of cost of goods sold as well. Again, a lot of things that are typically taking place in Excel, whether those are passed around or you're exporting it to do your own analysis, and has a lot of people working with many different versions of the truth. So that's one of the main things this product is meant to combat. Here's one other finished example that I like to touch on, just because it shows how much better variance reporting that you can do for your planning scenarios when they're all in a consistent format on the back end. So here, this report allows us to collect the data for planning at the business unit, profit center, and project level. We can create new versions, manage our master data, and then lock and approve versions as well. So by updating the version status over here, we're going to be able to control whether a version is editable or if it's been finalized, it'd be approved. And that's when it's going to become read-only. So for now, we can put this one back to in progress as we're going to take a look at that. And let's pretend that I am responsible for, ultimately approving that the February version of our forecast is good to go. Now, before going in and marking that as approved, I can go to this compare versions tab right here. So this is pre-configured standard Power BI visuals, and we're going to be able to pick and choose different versions that we want to compare. So you can do this for your production versus best case scenario, whatever that may be. But also, if I want to approve my February version, I might want to compare it to the most previous version from January to see if there's any glaring discrepancies. And now here you can see that side-by-side comparison. In the navy blue, we have February. In the bright green, we have January, and a red line highlighting the version variance as well. And I can take a look at that. It really peaks in July, so I might want to take a closer look at that. And then on the right, we have a breakdown of it. Right off the bat, right here, you can see data and analytics profit center. That number nearly quadruples from 46,000 up to 195,000. So before saying the February version is good to go, I might want to go back to where that planning data was collected within the same report here, select my February version. And then data analytics profit center, obviously for demo purposes, we made this easy. But as you can imagine, doing this type of forensic work, tracking down Excel spreadsheets and whatnot might be pretty difficult and time consuming. And now I can see right off the bat, large number, the size of the variance. And there's a comment explaining that we added a couple hundred licenses to a software subscription renewal. So now I do feel good going in, marking that as approved, which is going to make this a read-only report that's used solely for historical and variance reporting purposes going forward. All right, so those were a couple examples as far as planning goes. We can switch gears into custom applications, but did want to take a breather, see if there is any questions, comments from the audience at this time. I can see right off the bat here, Jeremy gives you heartburn. Yeah, so the main thing I always like to make clear is that our product isn't used to update source record data. Usually you're going to be using a staging area database, and we're going to be replacing things that are collected in Excel, otherwise in a less governable, less auditable, less secure way, and just making that process automated. So there are many ways to revert your changes. You can have full-blown workflows and approvals associated with the versions if you would like to. So I can touch on a couple examples of those while we're here. So for example, this is something that Fortune 100 company uses. They have 1,000 different users, multi-tier planning where we're doing it at the product level, country level, and at the corporate level. So pretty complex data model. If we look at their audit log, you can see the tuple information is quite large, but they have a very simplistic way of managing their versions and still getting the quasi workflow and approval from different levels of the organization. So here you can see our different versions. We have actuals, budget, last best estimate is the monthly reforecast that they wanted to use our product for. And then you can see these 3 basic statuses. So during initial, all the product level contributors are going to be able to come in, make their updates. So they have that period open for a few days. Once those are collected, they're going to switch it to under review, at which point in their case, only sales and finance leadership are going to retain right access, be able to put the final touches on that. And lastly, it becomes finalized, and that is when it's going to be a read-only report going forward. A more strict way of managing the different versions is something like this. For this organization, rather than having thousands of contributors updating the same version, they want each of their users to be able to send their own versions through some type of workflow and approval, and it's not going to be pulled into the master version until it makes it through each step of the workflow. So right here, you can see earlier I had made this, my what if scenario. From a high level, we can see how it is shaping up with the different scenarios within our database here. We have full audit history of who made it and when. And then if I feel like I'm good to go here, I of course can go in, edit it, pull up the data entry matrix, make any changes, but we have this send for approval button right here. So this will prompt me with a form. I can go in, enter something for all the required fields, then hit save change, and then someone else within the organization is going to be responsible for updating that. As far as ways to govern who can make changes, absolutely. It is going to be leveraging Power BI's native settings, so role level security and Active Directory groupings, and then you can use right measures if you want to lock down specific columns or specific data points even. But you can actually use our visuals to update those things or create a UI around that as well. So here you can search by individual employees or have a drop-down list. And you can see you select the sets of your data that you want to govern. And then I can go in and I can say the theoretical employee in our demo database should be able to write to orange and tonic brands, but only be able to read apple and cola. And then here's an example of more of a UI around that, where we have the emails of the different contributors for this report, and then we have some as admin contributors, and then you can have read only. Of course, these are all kind of defined by your processes rather than anything that the tool is going to tell you how to do it.
Hey, Evan, I'll just pause for questions here.
Kind of different.
So I would, question would be, how much of this experience that we're seeing is out of the box and how much we have control?
Okay, I'll read it.
So one question from the room, Evan, is how much of this experience is out of the box and how much do we have to kind of program and do we have control over?
Absolutely. So that really depends on the use case. So if we want to have, very complex audit logs, workflows, and approvals, that's going to be where configuration comes in because it's usually going to be leveraging SQL triggers on the back end or stored procedures. So that's where more of the programming work comes in. As far as getting a minimum viable product where we just want the same thing that we're doing in Excel moved into Power BI with right back directly to a database, that can be very quick and easy and a matter of having our product installed and then swapping it in and out. So it always does depend on the use case. And as for the custom applications, I feel like the lines are more clear because everything can essentially be defined within the column settings. But for planning, those use cases are a little bit more complex naturally. So there is a pretty large variance as far as some customers are fine with using the out-of-the-box features. Some want, highly specific workflows and approvals and things that require triggers on the back end.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to pause again and ask for questions.
I'm kind of curious. Oh, sorry. Just curious about it, say, let's imagine I had a Power BI report set up. It's like a cash flow statement. It's ready to go. I just want to be able to, toggle some of these things, add or subtract some risk. How quickly can they get me to that point? Like, what does onboarding look like, I guess? Okay, I'll ask that question. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
so if you're,
Oh, did
I
you
was
hear
able to hear that. Yes, I did. So what onboarding looks like. So ultimately, if you already have Power BI model set up, you have some type of database on the back end, we technically could write back to SharePoint list, but some of the problems that we try to solve would persist. So SQL, Snowflake, if you already have a database in place, already have Power BI models, it's really a matter of installing the write back engine and swapping out our visuals for the standard Power BI visuals. So any project with us is primarily going to be a Power BI data modeling project or data architecture project. And from there, it can be plug and play. Again, if you want highly specific processes or steps throughout that, workflows and approvals, that's where it can become more of a back end project. But for what you had just described, you already have the model created. Installing our product typically takes a couple days as far as prepping your environment for the install. Our team helps you install it. And then we have, self-service training courses that you can go through. And again, if you already have that model, you can just swap out our visual.
Okay, thanks. We had one more question. I'm going to get it.
It was the same, but let's add on,
Adding on to the last question, what are some of the performance limitations that we might face?
Absolutely. So a lot of it's going to be normal internet performance things like network latency, the device the end user is using. The biggest controllable one is going to be the size of the data set that you're writing back to. So most of our demo reports that I've showed you today have 2 to 3 second write back and refreshing of the data model / Power BI report. And they have between 200,000 and 500,000 rows on the back end. If an organization has their actuals and they have billions, maybe trillions of records within them, typically you don't need that level of granularity. We don't need bill to, ship to information for each individual transaction that's underlying the reports. So you can usually have those aggregated up by some type of ETL or just have a separate staging area database rather than adding a version ID column to your actual database. So that is the biggest controllable aspect of performance. When it comes to the planning use cases, because they do have to interact with the data model. The other use cases I'll show you today are more transactional, and you can have a billion records that you're writing back to, and it's not going to be a problem.
Okay, thanks. I think that was all we had for now. If you want to continue a bit more.
All right, sounds good. So again, we'll get into some more of the transactional use cases. So over here, you can see we're using a Power On table editor. Like I'd mentioned, the data entry matrix and the 2 drag and drop visuals involve writing back on measures. In this case, we're just making updates to rows within our database. So over here within the column properties, again, not writing back to a data model, just using a SQL data source. And then we have these properties here. So this makes for some easy no-code custom application development, where each column, you're going to be able to easily say, this should be visible or it should be hidden via toggle. Same thing goes with read only or editable. And then we have this column type dropdown. So this is going to allow you to put up the bumpers at the bowling alley, if you will, so that end users can only enter and save data that aligns with the column type. So if I want commentary, I can say text, numerical values, have date pickers, selection, drop-down lists, checkboxes, links to other sites, so on and so forth. So this one can very much be plug and play. If we have our data in SQL, we can pop in a Power On table editor, go through, define our column properties, and we do have a lot of customers that will have working applications within a week of installing when using this visual. Now over here, you can see our customer. This one is defined as selection. So it's only going to allow us to select customers that exist within that table. You can also hardwire them or have them looking at a referential table like we have here. But this allows users, again, to make that update without typing the naming convention themselves, potentially messing that up. Same thing goes with the date formatting. I can select that from our calendar picker here. And then we can even have rich text commentary enabled with this visual. So we have bold, italics, numbered lists, so on and so forth. And then quantity and price, of course, numerically defined. So if I go in and accidentally type a letter, it'll flash red and let me know that's not going to align with the column type. And then similar to our other visuals, any filtering that we apply with standard Power BI visuals will be applied to our visual. So if I want to go through and filter down from 100 pages of records here, I can select a certain brand, certain customer group, get us down to 2 pages, and then instead of making line by line updates, I can use the set all bar to make some wholesale changes. So this is very commonly used for exception reporting and data management to, things that just about any data and analytics team is going to be working with. So first and foremost, exception reporting, I broadly consider that any report that's meant to identify and highlight some type of data-driven unfavorable variance. So something went overdue, we spent more money than we expected to. It's nice that Power BI can have that flashing red, but we also need to figure out why that took place, how to avoid it from happening in the future. So in this case, this is a vendor data quality application. So this is a lot of company-specific jargon, but nonetheless, the data stewards are responsible for coming in and pretty simply looking at the error message, what customer it's for, whatever that may be, and then they have to assign a reason code. So we have these 5 options via dropdown here. I can make those updates, use a checkbox to say whether that error was fixed or not, and then have free text commentary here. Now, the assignment of reason code is very simplistic to implement, but also allows management to report in real time on, what reason is causing the most of these issues to really guide their continuous improvement efforts. And then here you can see, for me, this approval tab is going to be grayed out. So if we go back, people at different levels of the organization, here is going into the error details. From this view, I'm not going to be able to update the things that were updated on the previous screen. That's not my responsibility, but I would be able to go through and update whether it's been approved or if it's rejected or if it's still pending. Now, when I do this, I believe I am not in here as an admin, so I should get an error message here. And then we have a validation message. Only administrator can change approval field. And then those things, like I showed previously, are managed in this user management UI. So again, only certain end users would have the ability to make updates here as well. Here's another one that is meant to be able to explain variances. Again, we have things that are flashing red, and now we're going to allow people to apply human insights to really understand why that happened and document that. So within this report, we're using a standard Power BI matrix. We're not going to go through and change any of these financial figures. They already occurred. We just want to better understand the ones that we want to not repeat. So here, this one's flashing red. If I hover over that, you can actually see a full audit log of different users going in, leaving their comments, tagging each other, and ultimately explaining that this reason was due to an unexpected maintenance cost, and then it is marked as resolved. So for any of these, I can select it, pull up the comment bar down here, and then that's where the table editor will pop up, and I can insert my comment if I would like to. And it also has comment status, which automatically assigns an icon with it, and you can assign it to another user, and all the audit information throughout this is captured as well. Because everything that we do is written back to a database, you can report on any updates that are being made. So this group also has the landing page of comment analytics. So if I'm starting my day and have to knock these out, let's say I'm Mike Murata, I want to look at anything that's assigned to me, maybe in a particular group or business unit, whatever that may be, which is marked as unresolved. Then I can get a nice summary here. And if I want to drill through to the actual report, I can do that with a right click. And then data management, as I mentioned, if an organization goes through a lot of acquisitions, they might spend a ton of time trying to map that company's product SKUs, service lines, cost centers, whatever that may be, into their corporate reporting structure. So this is an oil organization. They have oddly named SKUs like Z-type hydraulic fishing jar parts. Finance and BI folks are responsible for mapping them in the reporting hierarchies, and they have no clue what a hydraulic fishing jar part is. So if we scroll over, in this case, the guy knows that information as a product line manager, and he has no idea what a SQL statement is. So this kind of brings both of their expertise together. Glenn is able to go through, they're able to assign unmapped items to him, and he knows the stuff like the back of his hand. He can make those updates and then send it back to the finance and BI team. Typically, this type of use case would also have some type of workflow and approval, so the finance team can approve before those changes are made to their production reporting structure. All right, so those were some of the custom applications. I can take another quick pause if there are any questions there, and then we can wrap things up with a quick preview of our newest visuals as well.
Can you hear me okay over here, Evan?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good deal. I didn't realize this was off mute. Any questions so far? There's a lot to take in there. Right. Okay, no, I think we're pretty good. Let's see those new visuals, and then we'll break for lunch.
All righty, sounds good. So as I mentioned, our newest visuals really bring a true Excel embedded within Power BI experience without the pitfalls of collecting data in Excel. So this is something, you know, whenever you try to introduce new technology, one of the biggest risks is that the end users just don't like it because it's, you know, different from what they're doing today. It's not familiar. Typically, they are very familiar with Excel, so this really eliminates any of that risk as well. And it's really from a development perspective as well as the end user perspective that you get that familiar Excel functionality. So over here, you can see we're still writing to columns in one of our databases. That's where the data is going to live, but we have this Power Excel table visual. Like the table editor, we're allowed to connect to a data source here, and then we have our column properties, but we also have a full Excel ribbon on the left, where you can even import an existing Excel template to bring over the stylization or the formulas there. And then you have all the other options you're used to. So if you want to get fancy with your formatting, that's one thing that's pretty difficult in Power BI. Finance people want their bold, italics, double underlined in the same column. That is not easy to do in Power BI. Now that becomes just as easy as you can do it within Excel. You have, you know, the ability to lock down cell formatting and really pick and choose what end users should and should not be able to do. Should they be able to change formulas? Should they be able to, you know, change the column width, whatever that may be. So you can open it up or keep it as closed down as you would like. And of course, all the Excel formulas. So you don't necessarily need to know DAX for everything. For example, this calculated column right here for our volume is simply G8 times H8. Our quantity times our price is going to get us to that volume. So that's a little preview of what it looks like as far as being a Power BI developer. And then as an end user, again, all this can be locked down, but you have the familiar functionality of copy and paste, client-side formulas, drag and drop bars here. You can drag to fill things, whatever that may be. And here we can see we are looking at a financial planning application in this case. Again, we can leverage Excel formulas. So if I go in, I think, all right, February should equal January, and I'd like to see a 7% increase on that. So I'm going to say times 1.07. That formula has been applied, and then I can drag to fill if I expect that trend to continue. All the same right back functionality that I showed you with the standard suite, but with the extra bells and whistles of familiar Excel features and functionality. Is another one that was popular there while inflation was going crazy for a bit. So this is an organization that wanted to propose new pricing for their products to specific customers. So we can see we have all the information, let us know who's the sales rep responsible, who's the customer, and what product are they buying in what quantities. And we can see that quantity, the price that we've been charging them, the revenue that's been achieved by that. And then we're going to automatically suggest a new price here and what the suggested new revenue would be. As the person responsible for that account, you can either go in and say, yes, that price increase is fine, or you can say no if you have a reason for doing so. Maybe we have a contractual obligation to not increase our price by more than 5% on any given year. So I can say the new price should equal the current price times 1.05. I can scroll over. If you are making a change here, you're going to be required to have a reason for the adjustment. Again, so management can track why these things are occurring. Contractual reason, free text commentary over here. If I can continue scrolling over, you can see once the save is committed, it'll let us know who made that update as well. This report also has built-in validation logic. So if I go in, say, no, that price isn't okay, and then put in a price that goes past a certain threshold, it's going to flash yellow and it's not going to let me perform that update. And again, that's something that can be managed from the front end if you would like it to. We have price insert sensitivity right here. And this is set up so that we can't increase the price by more than 55%. We can't lower the price by more than 10%. As I mentioned, financial reporting, again, that's some things where there are some areas of that there's limited flexibility within Power BI. So this just allows people to get that financial report look and feel that they're used to by applying formatting in the same way that everybody's able to do it within Excel. So these are all using the Power Excel table, which is considered an upgraded version of the table editor. And then we do also have a Power Excel pivot table here. So this is just like the matrix where we have smart formulas, if I want to say increase 20%, but we can also use Excel formulas, copy and pasting, whatever we want to do there.
This is really cool, Evan. So what's the release timeline on those visuals?
The Power Excel table is available now, and it is in production at many of our clients. Power Excel pivot table is going to be ready within a month and a half, so pretty much early 2023.
Nice. Excellent. Any other questions for the Power On team or for Evan? Well, this is really excellent. Evan, we'll be posting, we've recorded the meeting. I hope it's okay if we post this on YouTube along with our other meeting presentations.
Absolutely, no problem.
We'll tag you on there too. You can make handles on YouTube now. So thanks a lot for taking time to meet with us. I know that it was really good for people to kind of be exposed to some of the possibilities here and have a lot of financial people in the room. And thanks for bearing with us on the technical issues. Next time I will bring more powerful audio systems. So
no worries. Appreciate the help there. I'll throw my email in the chat bar here. Anybody, if they have more specific questions, please feel free to reach out at any point.
Thank you very much, sir. We got it.
Alrighty. Thank you for having me, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Evan, and thank you, everybody online. We're going to take a break now for lunch until 1:30. So let's do that. Let's eat. And hope you guys get a little break too. We'll be back at 1:30.
Lunch for us?
Oh,